Hello Year 10, this is Mr. Whitehead here with lesson 5 of the video lessons that I've been doing from home while school was closed. So this lesson number 5, the topic is action codes and Enigma codes, okay? And this work is going to last for the duration of 1 week, so starting from the 16th of June, okay, which is the Tuesday, up until the 23rd of June, which is the following Tuesday, so 1 week. Just a reminder, like I always do with the instructions which I would like you to complete, make sure you watch this full video lesson on YouTube. Make sure that you take notes whilst you are watching the video, alright, before you start the assignment at the end of the video. At the end of the video, there is a slide full of questions, full of things that I would like you to do. All you then need to do following watching the video is answer that question slide in as much detail as you possibly can about your chosen superhero films. So again, a reminder, do not start with this lesson. This is lesson number 5. So if you haven't completed the following 4 lessons on iconography, stock characters, narrative and Todorov, go back and complete those 4 lessons first. I want everybody to be completing this work in the order in which I'm setting it, because essentially one does follow on from another. Alright, so make sure if you haven't completed any of those, go back and complete those first before completing this lesson. So what you will need from home, you will need your creative media book or some A4 lined paper. You'll need a pen so you can take the notes whilst I'm talking you through this week's topic and this lesson. You'll also need access to your emails or Microsoft Teams. I know that says the VLE, but it's supposed to say Microsoft Teams. And you'll also need access to a PowerPoint document or a Word document, because I want you to complete the assignment work at the end of this video lesson online on a PowerPoint or on a Word document, so then you're easily able to transfer it over when we return back to school. Okay, so this week's topic, action codes and Enigma codes, we are going to start with action codes. So what is an action code? So, an action codes, surprisingly, are actions that are significant to the progression of the story. Essentially, these action codes help the story move forward, okay? It can be anything, and I mean literally absolutely anything, that changes the state of the narrative and the story. So anything that changes or alters where the story is going to go, alright? Often, they may introduce a new problem or introduce kind of like a revelation or some sort of something significant that is new to the narrative. So it's literally anything that can move the story forward. Now this can be something as simple as a phone ringing, alright? So for example, if there is a phone call and then you know that action code, there's going to be something significant said on the phone which is going to change where the narrative goes. That person might get a phone call from maybe a doctor, and then we learn that that person is maybe ill, okay, which changes the state of the narrative and the storyline. It could be, for example, a knock at the door. Alright, it could be someone we're then introduced to a new character who is going to change where the story goes. It can be anything as simple as this, alright? So what action codes do, they teach the audience new things, alright? They bring something new about that character or about the storyline, alright? So they give the audience the much needed information for the story to progress and for the story to move forward. So that is what an action code is. It's an action that's significant and signifies to help the story move forward. So when are action codes used in TV and film? So in order to demonstrate when action codes are used, I'm going to use the example of the soap opera genre to kind of help you, because everyone will be aware of soap operas. I know some of you may watch them daily. I'm not one of those people because they are terrible, but everybody at some point in their lives will have watched probably an episode of Coronation Street, EastEnders, Hollyoaks, whatever it may be. So I'm using soap operas to give this example of action codes. So, if you've watched soap operas, you'll understand that it's key and it's absolutely essential that the storyline and the narrative moves forward continuously, and it's continuity of the plot. All right. So in soap operas, the events always unfold in chronological order, in time order. One thing happens after another. That's how, because they work in real time. Okay. So with action codes, there are plenty of different opportunities for the plot to progress. Okay, soap operas rely heavily on action codes for the storyline to progress. So, for example, well, I'll bring an example in after, but they introduce a new, what we call narrative arc or an angle of the story that offers different issues for the characters to face. All right, so going back to that example that I said previously. There could be a phone call or there could be a knock at the door which introduces a new arc or angle to that story. All right, it could be a breakup that's happening when a character knocks on their partner's door. Okay, and that offers a different issue for that character to face. All right, so a simple action code such as these two that I've given, that's what it does. It allows for the plot and the story and the narrative to progress. So for audiences, so as an audience, when you're watching soap operas, action codes encourage and keep the narrative alive and worth watching. All right. So it's these significant moments, like a phone ringing, like a knock at the door, like the opening of a door, like a new scene. Okay, which makes it worth watching for us because it's something new and it's a new angle to that story. So, for example, I'm going to bring an example of EastEnders in for you to help you understand what action codes are. So, in this episode of EastEnders, which I unfortunately watched, Linda and Whitney are talking at the table when they hear a scream outside. The scene then cuts to Sharon screaming at a rubbish bag, claiming that there is a rat in the bin bags. So, the use of this action code, in this case the scream that the characters hear outside, meant that the story could progress onto a different angle, onto a different story arc in the episode, which then takes our attention to Sharon, who is screaming at the rubbish bags. Okay, so this simple scream, the action code in this particular instance, it changes the angle of the story and it introduces us to something new as the audience. We now see and we are introduced to a new character and we're introduced to an angle of the story where this person is clearly scared about rats in a bin bag. All right, so it focuses on a different character. So I've got a couple of screenshots here where they hear the screaming outside. They go out to investigate, okay? Simple as that. They both look towards the scream which they hear, and then they go outside. To summarise action codes then, I think action codes are really, really, really simple, and you easily will be able to identify an action code within your superhero film. But just to summarise what action codes are and when they are used. So, action codes are actions in the narrative that tip off the viewer about what to expect as the narrative progresses. Now, that's quite a complex way to understand it, to describe it, but I do think that just because of how simplistic an action code can be, it really is just something which signifies progression in the story, in the narrative. Okay, and action codes rely on the idea of cause and effect. All right, so something causes potential a problem, and then or the action, and then the effect is the characters react to that action. Okay, so last little example. I've given you the example from soap operas, but I'm going to give you just another genre example. So in an episode of Casualty, okay, which is a medical drama. Actions early in the episode often give clues as to what might happen later on. Okay, so for example, a character forgetting to switch the iron off might lead to an accident which results in them attending the casualty department. So the fact that we see the iron not being switched off is the action code, which then leads us to the story, to the narrative progressing, because we may understand that that's going to cause an accident. Okay, so that's the cause and that's the effect of that particular action code. So that's action codes then. If you need to go back just to kind of refresh, or if you're unsure about anything about action codes, then feel free to drop me an email. But that's action codes. I think fairly straightforward. Moving on now then. So what is an Enigma code? So I've spoke to you about action codes. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is an Enigma code. Now I may have mentioned this in lessons previously, just kind of touched on it very, very lightly, but now I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail. So, an Enigma code. Now, this is a technique or a narrative technique which only allows the audience to see part of the story, part of the narrative. So, an Enigma code is designed to raise questions for the audience and leads a sense of mystery, a sense of ambiguity, which is designed to leave them hooked. Okay? Now, just giving you a very, very, very quick example. If a car pulls up on a street in New York and then we have a shot of the feet which then are stepped out, the Enigma code in that particular case is who do those feet belong to? Who is the identity of this mysterious person? All right? So films can create Enigma codes in various ways. So when we've got that shot of the shoe and it kind of and the camera slowly tilts up to then the character's face, that is what's called building enigma. It's building a mystery about who that character is, because they seem mysterious because we don't know what that identity is. So an Enigma code could be something as simple as a character who is being introduced, making the audience think, who are they? Okay? So if we're introduced to a character in a film and we don't know who they are, that's an Enigma code because we don't know that person's name. Their identity is a mystery. It's ambiguous who that character is. So just like action codes, Enigma codes, they give an opening for progression in the story, okay? But more importantly, and it's really important that you understand this, Enigma codes are used to entice the audience to continue watching it, all right? And they're supposed to create interest with the plot and storyline, all right? They're supposed to essentially make the audience keep on watching so they can answer the questions in which the Enigma codes raise, okay? So simply, if I was going to summarize it, Enigma codes, they create questions for the audience and it leaves them with mystery, and they have questions that are unanswered, okay? Which essentially then makes them continue watching the TV or film, the TV show or film, because they have an interest in finding out the answer to their question which it's raised. Okay? So, when Enigma codes are used, so again, I thought it would be easier if I used the example of a soap opera as well as a crime drama to essentially give you an understanding of when this narrative technique is used in film and TV. So, starting with soap operas. So soap writers love to leave episodes on cliffhangers, okay? So a cliffhanger is an Enigma code, all right? So that's the most common use of Enigma code in soap operas, okay? It leaves the episode with unanswered questions, which then entices the audience and persuades them to continue to watch it tomorrow night and the next episode to find out the answer to their questions. All right, so this is a technique which essentially encourages the audience to continue their interest in the series. All right, and it leaves the narrative open-ended with lots of different questions for the audience want answering, and the only way that they can answer those questions is by watching the next episode. Similarly, so I think that's quite a simple way to understand what an Enigma code is. Similarly, detective dramas, they use Enigma codes to slowly reveal the narrative. So it's slightly different as to the way in which soap operas use them. Enigma codes, they slowly reveal the storyline, all right? So key information is slowly revealed as to who may have committed that particular crime. So key information needed to solve the case is saved until near the end of the program to create a thrilling conclusion, to keep the audience guessing, to keep the audience thinking of questions who may have committed the crime or the murder. All right, so simply, without creating this mystery, without creating these questions for the audience throughout the TV show or throughout the program, this genre would not exist. Okay, detective dramas, crime dramas, they solely rely on creating enigma codes to create that thrilling and mysterious conclusion at the end until the big reveal of who actually has committed that crime. So, a quick specific example of an enigma code used in an episode of EastEnders. So, in this particular episode, Carmel is confronted with the return of Masood. Okay, there are no hints to his return, therefore this leads the audience wondering, why has he returned? And what does this mean for Carmel? So that's the enigma code there. Why is Masood returned all of a sudden out of the blue? What does it mean for the future of him and Carmel? All right. So these are questions in which this particular enigma code raises for the audience, and the only way to find out the answers to these questions and this enigma is to watch on, and because they will be answered potentially in episodes later still to come. All right. So you can see realistically how Enigma entices and persuades the audience to watch on to answer the questions in which these Enigma codes raise. Alright, so I'm hoping now you should have a pretty good understanding of what both an action code is and when it is used and why it is used, and what an Enigma code is, when it is used and why it is used. Alright? So now it's time for you to apply this knowledge to your chosen superhero film, alright? So on the last slide is the slide I would like you to complete for your chosen superhero film and TV show. You probably have got a good idea of how this process works by now, okay? But here I am just explaining it once again to make sure that you fully understand what you are required to do. So, I've just explained the topic this week, action codes and enigma codes, alright? Now you just need to apply this knowledge to your assignment and your chosen superhero film. So this work is contributing towards your final grade in this subject. So it is really, really important that you continue to complete this work to the best of your ability. That means in as much detail as you possibly can when you're answering my questions and referring to specific examples in your chosen superhero films. That means a specific scene, okay? So when you have completed this work, I need you to submit this work on Microsoft Teams, okay? As soon as it is done, hand the assignment in so I can have a look over it and mark it when this whole assignment is going to be complete. So just a quick reminder of what you need to do and what you're required to do in order to get a level 2 distinction in this particular assignment. All right? So you need to analyse the relationship between genre, narrative, representation and how production techniques are used effectively to create meaning and engage selected audiences, with reference to considered examples of media products. So far, if you have completed all the video lessons, we've done genre with iconography, we've done narrative with the narrative lesson and Todorov's narrative techniques, and we've also done representation when we've looked at representations of the characters within your chosen superhero films. And it's all about how these things work together, okay? So we have been covering these things so far. The next part is how production techniques are used effectively to create meaning. So this means you need to refer to specific camera shots, elements of mise-en-scène, sound and editing when you are referring to your specific scenes. Okay, so you need to tell me about that specific camera shot when there is an Enigma code. So if, for example, you choose an Enigma code like somebody stepping out of a car and it's a mystery who that particular person actually is, you need to tell me that there's a close-up of the character's black shoes, okay, and it slowly tilts upwards until the character is revealed from a low angle. You need to make sure that you are using that language and that terminology that we have learnt over the last few years, over the last year, should I say. So creating meaning, you need to make sure that you understand how these Enigma codes and action codes, how they affect and make the audience feel, okay? How does the audience feel about that particular Enigma code? Are they intrigued? Are they thrilled? Are they scared? Are they fearful? You need to tell me what meaning it creates. And you also need to tell me about what the purpose of the director is. Why has the director used that particular Enigma code? And then finally, you need to make sure, this is the big one, that you are referring to a specific example from scenes within your film. You need to know your films inside out to get these specific examples. So, this is the assignment slide. This is the last slide of the video lesson that I need you then to apply the knowledge that you've just learned about action and Enigma codes to your specific chosen superhero films. Okay, so there are 4 bullet points. The first bullet point, I need you to define what an action code is in your own words. That doesn't mean you go back and you look at what my definition was. I need you to write it down in your own words about what you understand by what an action code is. All right, so this is now, in the second bullet point, this is where you need to provide an example. So that specific example that I referred to here, this is where you need to provide a specific example of an action code. It can be anything which triggers and signifies the story moving forward, okay? I then need you to describe that action code, what happens, in as much detail as you can, and how this action code develops the narrative and storyline. Where does the narrative go from there? What happens next, and how has that action code been significant in getting us to that part in the narrative, in the story? Then, the last question is, how is this action code significant in developing this narrative in the story? So how has it got us from that point to there, and how significant is it? Then, moving on to Enigma codes. Again, I need you to define what Enigma code is in your own words. If you simply just look back at what I've done, I will realise that, and that is plagiarism. You cannot just copy and paste. Please put it in your own words. It's a simple 2 sentences about what an Enigma code is. Then again, you need to provide an example of what an Enigma code is from your chosen superhero film, all right? So again, describe what happens, describe this Enigma code in as much detail as you can, and what happens to create this Enigma code, all right? So there's a couple more questions on Enigma code. Next one is about what questions does it leave the audience asking, okay? So try and aim for thinking of maybe 3 questions about what this Enigma code leaves the audience asking, okay? How does this Enigma code create mystery? How does this mystery make the audience feel, okay? Does it make them feel tense, thrilled, scared, intrigued, okay? And then how would this engage the target audience of this superhero film? So essentially, you need to outline that Enigma codes, they leave the audiences asking questions, they create mystery, and then the audience has to watch on, okay, in order to answer those questions, to find out what they mean, okay? But what's really important is this last question. How would this engage the target audience of a superhero film? So you need to think about what that Enigma code is, what questions it's leaving us asking, and how that engages the target audience. So think back to the last assignment when you all defined the target audience of around maybe like a 30-year-old white male. So how would this particular Enigma code that you've chosen attract that specific target audience in your superhero film? So that is the assignment part of this. This is the work that I need you to submit to me on Microsoft Teams. Okay? So, as ever, if you have any questions regarding this work, I am available on the chat facility on Microsoft Teams. You can just pop up to me and ask me any questions that you need. Or you can drop me an email. You all have my email address by now, so again, just type it out. Or if you're really, really struggling, what I have been doing is a couple of quick phone calls home just to explain it in maybe a different way to help those people who are struggling out. But if you do require help, please don't hesitate to ask. That is what I am here for. All right? So good luck, and make sure that you submit this work on Microsoft Teams by the deadline. Okay? See you. Bye for now.